Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to have Amy Calvert, CEO, Events Industry Council, join us for this interview and enlighten us with her thoughts of what is really happening on the global level. I've had the privilege of working along with Amy over the last 3 years as I represent IELA at EIC and now sit on its board. One of the most amazing professionals that I've interacted with. She is a storehouse of knowledge and information and experience, and I'm really looking forward to this interaction. I will leave it to Amy to tell us more about herself because I'm going to fall short with any words that I will express for her. So Amy, to you.
Well, thank you so much, Vicki, for having me and for your incredible leadership. It's really been an honor to have you as part of our board of directors for the past 2 years. We're really grateful for your leadership and your inspiration and your perspective. It's really helped us as an organization evolve and think differently about, how we are trying to be the great explainers of our organization, right? As a global federation that serves industry professionals worldwide. So thank you for that. So, I just love this industry. I am just very, very committed and passionate about where we are right now and the inspiring way in which all organizations, all individuals have really come together to unite and to show our resilience and tell our best story as far as advocacy. I've been in the industry for over 30 years. I started my career actually working for hotels. I worked for Lowe's Hotels on property in sales and service, and then from there transitioned to working for destinations in a variety of capacities, working for hotel chains as part of a global sales team, and then destinations again, and then found my way over to EIC just about 2 years ago. So it's really been an incredible time to join this organization that really is intended to, if it's really living its purpose and serving its purpose to serve the events industry through advocacy research, professional standards, and recognition. So really incredible, dynamic global business council or federation serving the MICE industry.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you for taking out time and supporting IELA so generously. That's all I can say. Friends, we also have Jacqui Nel, who's the chairperson of the IELA Industrial Relations Working Group. She's going to join me in shooting some questions at Amy, which I'm sure she's going to be excelling, and we're going to be going back with much more knowledge and awareness of what's happening on the global level. So let me now tell you something about EIC, friends. So EIC is the Events Industry Council. The mission of the council is the global voice, to become the global voice of the business events industry on advocacy, research, professional recognition, and standards. And, I've been very fortunate to have been a part of this discussion on Vision 2025 for EIC. And it is the most amazing work that has been done. And I'm so proud of being a part of that discussion. The vision of EIC is enriching lives and driving economic growth through the power of events worldwide. And the values remain ethical, transparent, inclusive, innovative, and responsible activity at all levels of the events industry. The members, you'll see the next slide. We are now, I think, 34 members, Amy.
That's correct.
34 members globally, and IELA is one of those proud members, and very fortunate to be a part of it. And we have the global industry as a part of it, MPIs and the CISOs and almost everybody over there. And let Amy tell us about some of the programs that EIC is carrying along all over the world.
Thanks, Vicki. Yeah, so I'm glad you shared a little bit about the vision. We, as a board and as a leadership group, as a council, about 2.5 years ago, we got together at one of our board meetings in our strategic planning sessions, and we worked with Robin Lokerman, and we created our Vision 2025, which I think was a really important endeavor for this group, right? We had not really, as a leadership group, come together and really talked about our vision and our purpose in a very, very long time. I think we did some really incredible strategic planning, but I think we realized that until we're really clear about our vision as an organization, anchored to our purpose and our values, that the strategic endeavors, you know, really were without that necessary foundation, right? To be, to allow us to have that sort of guiding light, that North Star. And when we were faced just a few months later with the global pandemic, I think one of the things that, you know, really struck me is that we were so fortunate to have gone through that exercise together as a group, so that we were united and really grounded and anchored to our purpose through this vision that was very inclusive and collaborative. You know, we worked for a period of about 9 months to ensure that, you know, all of our member organizations really were feeling very clear and supportive of this collective vision. And as we navigated, you know, the first few months of the pandemic, you know, we were really clear with that while we were there, obviously, to support these signature programs, ultimately we were there to facilitate conversation throughout the industry globally to best support our professionals, right? And there were so many varying needs at that time, but we really came together and through our signature program said, you know, what we're going to do right now is we are going to come together and facilitate some really important dialogue around what do we know about what this pandemic is forcing us to sort of think through, and who do we know that can help us sort of come together to ensure that we're having dialogue around, you know, what are the resources we need right now, and what is it that we need to be thinking about as we move through this crisis, and to ensure that we are adapting and innovating to deal with the things that were happening as a result of the pandemic. So through our first signature program that you see on the screen, the APEX Commission, we formed a global body, a task force that really looked at that, right? Really said, you know, representative of all global regions, all sectors within our industry. What are the resources? What are the tools? What are the key concepts that we need to raise and to share with industry professionals, you know, worldwide, so that they have the tools to navigate through, a lot of which in the very beginning were, you know, the safety protocols, really insights around risk assessment and risk mitigation, duty of care. We were really seeing ourselves as, you know, the facilitators of all of the resources that were available globally. So we were aggregating and curating resources through this APEX Commission. Historically, this group has looked at pan-industry issues and put together white papers and different resources, our glossary of terms, and so on and so forth. Industry agnostic tools that support the business, events, professional. Again, all sectors, all segments, all regions. So, you know, this APEX group is such an important part of what EIC really does, because, you know, on the one hand, we have the commercial enterprise of running the credential, the CMP credential, but we also, as our mission and our vision states, support the industry through advocacy, research, professional standards, and recognition. So the APEX is really, commission is really the place where a lot of those resources are developed. It's an industry-wide think tank of sorts, and an incredible group to be a part of. You use the word generous in your opening comments, and I can't think of a more generous act than what this group put forth over the past 2 years. I think we have over 20 different resources that have been published, everything from, you know, a resource around meeting and event design and choreography, to a code of conduct that, you know, is available to anybody to use worldwide, all the way through to resources around business continuity, best practices in B2B, B2C exhibitions in light of the pandemic. And, you know, again, this APEX Commission and this group have been on a bit of a dual path, really looking at, you know, what is it, again, that is needed right now as we rebuild trust and confidence, and how can this group come together and really think about adaptations and innovations for the future. So that's the first signature program. That's the APEX Commission, a legacy group, an incredibly generous and thoughtful group of subject matter experts that really come together to serve the industry under the umbrella of EIC. And many of the members are, obviously members of our organization, but they're also members of the private sector, really. So you have the supply side and the demand side kind of coming together in a really incredibly meaningful and generous way. The second signature program that you see on the screen is obviously the legacy standard, the gold standard in meeting professional education, the CMP credential. And EIC is the administrator of the CMP credential. We have, over the course of the lifetime of the credential, I've had over 22,000 people certify as CMPs. Right now, we have just over 12,000 globally. And it's just a really incredible group of passionate people that are really dedicated to their craft, really dedicated to excellence. It's a rigorous program, but it's an achievable program. And I see it really as the foundation of the career journey in meeting and event planning and organizing. And it's really interesting because in the world, in the community of CMPs, we have CMPs that are on the organizing side and the supply side. So it's really a wonderful tool because it helps create that baseline level of understanding of how we work together, how we build partnerships and expertise through the international standards, which are the foundation of the credential itself. And as we've been through the pandemic, we've really seen that those international standards are evergreen. Really this credential itself and the journey to achieve it allows an individual starting in their career journey to understand about risk assessment, to understand about the financial planning requirements for event organizing, all of obviously the logistics, but also the strategy. And one of the interesting things is when you manage a credential, you have to go through a competency profile project or a job task analysis every 5 years. We happen to be going through that right now. So what an incredible time to be thinking about, well, what are the tools and resources, the competencies that an event professional really needs to have in their toolbox, not only to achieve the credential, but then to continue to grow their career and develop their career. And I think, when I think about your leadership, Vicki, and what IELA is doing in terms of this program to empower women in leadership and equity, I think, it's a really important component of sitting for a credential is building your community and building your peer network and building, a cadre of professionals that you're learning side by side with. So I am really, really always so grateful to the CMP community because they are people that are always at the ready to serve and to learn and to grow and to advance. And really, I think an exemplary group of people when you think about our workforce, the future of our workforce, and how we adapt and innovate together. So the next signature program is our Center for Sustainability and Social Impact. And I think, obviously, this pandemic, if nothing else, it's taught us that we have tremendous power as an industry because we are so connected to every other industry, right? When you think about the fact that prior to the pandemic, we had 26 million professionals working in the events industry. We have, through our economic significance study, quantified that over 1.5 billion people participate in events annually. We represent over 1.5 trillion in global GDP as an industry globally. We, by definition, then have the ability to be a catalyst for meaningful change. And the pandemic has taught us really, at the heart of, COVID is this issue around health, wellness, and equity. And we have the ability, I think, because of who we are and what we do, in the events industry, we foster human connections, we build community, we educate, we inspire to help people evolve and commit and learn how to have an impact in terms of equity and sustainability and climate. So this center is really set up at the direction of our board and our council to really take on those issues on behalf of the council and all of our members, because we know they are global issues, they are pan-industry issues, and they are not challenges that we will solve independent of one another. And so we've set up tools, resources, education, certification. We have sustainable event standards. We now have our equity task force really looking at accelerating equity within the global events industry. And, we have a committee of volunteers that really support the Center for Sustainability, over 30 of them. Again, global leaders from all sectors, really helping to advance all of those programs and resources. And then knowledge and leadership sort of go hand in hand. Knowledge is our group, our volunteer group. It's how we facilitate meaningful content for all of our education and our publications. And really, it's the vehicle by which we also amplify all the great work of our members, like all the great work IELA is doing from the very beginning, with your Together We're Stronger program, or this, Power Up program that you're doing, and just the incredible way that you support the business events industry. It's really where we talk and amplify not only the work we're doing, but our members. Leadership, again, it's part of our vision. One of the things that we think is so important, especially now, is that we commit to being part of the solution around generating workforce development, helping to share meaningful career pathways, helping to ensure there's equity along those journeys. And that's where we obviously also have our global awards event every year, where we honor our Hall of Leaders winners, our Pacesetter winners, our social and adaptation and innovation winners. So EIC is just this really incredible dynamic organization, but it is powered through the passion and the purpose of our members and all the industry professionals that have been so generous to come together under this agnostic body to help us learn and grow and adapt and innovate through this incredibly challenging but inspiring time, because we've done just that. We have connected and united, and I truly hope that we continue down that path as we navigate into towards the end of 21 and into the future.
Like I said, Amy, you're a storehouse of wisdom, knowledge, experience. You've taken out quite a you've punctured some of my questions already, because I was planning to ask you a few questions which you've already seemed to have answered. So I'm probably going to tweak some of them and come down to limiting some of my questions. But what is your current assessment of the status of the event industry globally? What have you heard, about the events industry or the exhibitions commencing, face-to-face events beginning, which part of the world, or what is it what sort of information is coming to you through all your connections globally?
Well, I think, the pandemic has presented us a bit of opportunity to take a step back and reflect on how do we best tell our story about not only what we do, but why what we do matters, right? So it is obviously about our expertise, our commitment to duty of care. But I think the most interesting piece of the story to tell is how events impact positively economies, industries, future innovations, growth, and this area of building communities and helping to advance social justice issues, right? And I think, obviously there's a lot of play in the media around, the issues around COVID and, will the events industry continue to grow and thrive in light of some of the digital technologies that are being leveraged to fill the gap? And I think what we need to do is continue to stay united to drive that bigger and more important message forward. The reality is that even though we're hearing stories about, some of the challenges that we're still facing as this pandemic plays out, and there's been terrible sadnesses and really challenges that our workforce has faced, like really none other in the industry, we're continuing to show resilience. Meetings are continuing to happen successfully, continuing to happen without transmission, and really, at the end of the day, a way for us, I think, to continue to commit to living our values. And the important piece is that you really can't take the place, these digital platforms, while they have a place in building community and supporting industry professionals. They don't replace that which happens when people are together in person, those serendipitous moments, those peer networking development opportunities that are just the foundation to all of the things that we know events do. They're powered through human connections, and human connections happen when you're in person. So I think what we're hearing is that, you know, through our firsthand experience, after having sort of a pause, all of us, you know, as leaders, not having the opportunity to be together and now having the opportunity to come together, we recognize this firsthand. So I think this has been an incredibly important moment in time that's really fueling our passion and our drive and inspiring us to go forward and really continue to tell that best story. So I think, you know, obviously we have to think about value creation, right, as you all are doing as it relates to our members and the experiences we offer. We have to ask ourselves some tough questions about what part of what we were doing before should we carry forward, and what part of what we were doing before might not really be having the impact that we thought it had. So again, that's a healthy exercise to go through, you know, when you're an organization and you're putting forth resources and tools to serve your members. But I think overall, the long story short, Vicki, is we are optimistic as an industry about our future. We have some challenges ahead of us, but we are better for what we have been through, because it's reinforced that which we know is that what we do and telling the best story about what we do and the impact it has is really an important area for us to recommit to as industry professionals.
So like I was mentioning, you know, I've been very fortunate. I got to travel to UK, Canada, USA, Colombia, and Brazil in the last 5 to 6 weeks. And every flight and every airport was chock-a-block full. There was a lot of excitement of people wanting to travel. But having said that, you know, like all the IELA members are really dependent on a lot of international movement of traffic. So from your perspective, you know, these face-to-face meetings that are either opening up or likely to open up, what would be the driving factor for that? Is it, in your opinion, the you know, people getting, you know, now getting tired and frustrated of probably just sitting at home? Or is it the percentage of vaccinations that has been, you know, done across the government? What do you think would be the driving force in coming times for the revival of face-to-face meetings?
So, you know, I think it's a great question. In the beginning of this exercise, I was sharing with you the conversations we were having as an APEX COVID task force and thinking about that very thing. And we knew that this was going to be a journey about building trust and confidence, right? Individually, regardless of your role in this industry, or if you're a participant, you have to be comfortable in, and you have to be able to assess your own risk and really make decisions that feel comfortable to you. So as an industry, we also had to really have a lot of empathy around, you know, where individuals were in this journey. But I started, you know, as you said, there are things happening now, there's momentum happening now that are helping to rebuild that trust and that confidence, right? We're starting to see, while the vaccination rates are where we need them to be, or where we hope they would be, they are improving, you know, dramatically. We're also starting to see, and we're starting to, you know, learn more about, well, what type of testing protocols are really necessary. You know, you're starting to hear more about the relaxation of international travel restrictions. You know, I was watching the news this morning, and the International Air Transport Association is having their meeting in Boston, and they're talking right now about, well, you know, we might have been misinterpreting some of the data around, you know, whether or not the people coming into our countries were actually driving the uptick in transmission. Really, that's happening within the communities. So, you know, I think as a society globally, we're thinking and getting more comfortable with learning to how we're going to live with, you know, this virus, because we know it's going to be with us for a while. And I feel like we're now more equipped to do that. So as we feel more equipped to do that, I think people are going to feel more inclined to travel. I think that the government officials who are overseeing these policies are going to recognize that we need to continue to work to open up borders safely in order to facilitate this international trade and resume business. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think we're making progress. You know, we knew there was going to be, that we were never going to mitigate all the risk out of, you know, events and business travel. So, you know, learning to live, learning to adapt, learning to think about, you know, coming back in phases. Now we feel more equipped when there is an uptick to deal with it. You know, we feel more equipped. We're more aware now than we've ever been around protocols and duty of care. So, you know, I think we're making some really pretty good progress. And, you know, while the folks at Oxford Economics will say, you know, that international travel won't be back to its full 2019 rigor until likely 23, you know, beginning of 24, I think we're going to start to see some really good signals and improvement into 22 and beyond.
Yeah, so, you know, I mean, my assessment was also the same, you know, because with all these government restrictions on travels and the conditions that have been imposed. But having said that, you know, there was a lot of optimism that I connected with people during my travels. Tell me from your side, when you're interacting with any organizers or meeting professionals or event professionals, are they now currently, because of these travel restrictions, limiting their face-to-face events to more national levels, or are they now starting to look at any international participation also? I mean, let's look at it this way. We have IAE Expo also end of the year. I mean, what is their expectation of international travel? Because UFI Congress in November is a big challenge because of non-availability of visas for people to travel into Netherlands.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest point there is that, you know, we all know what the travel restrictions are, and we know the constituencies that we serve. So I think it's around, you know, being honest with your partners around what do you think collectively is reasonable to anticipate in terms of participation, given the realities of those restrictions. And over the past, you know, 12 months, while meetings have continued to happen, they've had to adapt, and potentially their participation is at a lower percentage of that which it normally is, and potentially that is attributable to the lack of international participation. That's not something that the organizers are purposely restricting. That's just the reality of the strict restrictions that are in place, right? So how can we, through the partnerships, I think, continue to take small steps towards recovery by still having those meetings, finding new ways in the interim to share the insights, information, and the community resources that are developed with all of our constituency, you know, maybe leveraging technologies. But by and large, I think people recognize, particularly with exhibitions, you know, trade shows and so forth, that which happens on the show floor is very difficult to replicate in a digital environment. And that represents all of the stakeholders in the ecosystem. But, you know, like I said, I think we're seeing really great examples of resilience, and CISO and UFI have done a terrific job sharing those case studies over the past, you know, 12 months. It's important to do that because people need to see tangible examples of how these meetings are happening, even though, you know, their stakeholders and the participants might be more domestic currently. I'm sure everybody is looking forward to the lifting of these travel restrictions because they miss seeing their, you know, their partners and their colleagues that come from all over the world. We've made so many advancements as an industry, you know, over the past 20 years, reaching out and building global communities. And that's part of, I think, what's, you know, driving so much innovation and expertise within our industry. So.
You know, in the case of IELA, you know, our lifeline, our only source of revenue is movement of cargo. It's not really the people that move in for meetings. So our lifeline is movement of equipment, cargo for trade shows and face-to-face events, and that of course is restricted also by travel. So when you talk about meetings, it's also impacting the trade shows and exhibitions and events. But I mean, is EIC hearing from organizers that they are planning events or trade shows or exhibitions overseas? Do you hear anything like this from within the your network?
I mean, my good friends at CISO and UFI and SASIOS and AEO are together in Singapore this week having, a modified version of a leadership summit, and really have worked, I think, in a very professional and diligent way, to have that meeting this year. The meeting was postponed last year. So, I mean, I think that's a really great example of, people working to continue to push forward and to travel globally. And again, it might be a modified version of what they had intended originally, but, I think we're starting to see, some of the relaxation of some of the restrictions, particularly between the United States and Europe. And I see that as a signal that over the next 12 months, that trend will continue. So yeah, I mean, I think that there are examples of meetings that are happening globally for organizations, regardless of where they exist. We're not back to where we were, and it's going to take, I think, a good year or so to continue this forward momentum before we, reach our goals. But we recognize, I think, in the most important piece is that that's a critical element of our success. So I think the unity around making sure that we're sharing the work that's being done from a policy perspective throughout the global regions. What are the stories we collectively can tell to ensure that the policy officials recognize the setbacks that happen to their economies when the cessation of international travel, continues. So, and that's progress, in my opinion, because that wasn't happening prior to the pandemic.
That's right. So in any case, the EIC's focus would be more of advocacy on a global level, where policies can be impacted. And I can understand that the individual organizers are not the ones that you would personally be interacting with, but members of EIC like CISO and, like you said, AEO and all the others, their members are actively going to be pursuing the goal of beginning their trade shows and events. And I'm getting a lot of positive feelers, but I mustn't sound very optimistic for IELA members that I think 2022 probably will be it'll be a slow process, and I think we can look at revival, an actual revival of 2019 numbers, probably more closer to end of 2022 or beginning 2023. That's the way. But one of the big challenges that I find, I'd like to pick your brain on is how has this, this past 18 months really impacted the skill sets or the loss of skills, the industry professionals. How do you see that? Do you see, are the organizers concerned about the loss of skills in our industry? Are the organizers from around the world, having these types of conversations with their suppliers? Because we as logistics professionals, are always hungry to hear from organizers their new or guidelines or new expectations. Do you hear anything about that in your interactions with global leaders?
Sure. I mean, I think we're all, regardless of what sector that you represent, we're all really very aware, hyper aware of the issues around, how this pandemic has impacted our workforce. We do interact with a lot of organizers and suppliers of trade shows, destinations, exhibition and logistics companies, as part of our volunteer corps, as part of our CMP community. And I think everyone is really just thinking about new ways to inspire people to come into our workforce. I think that's a role EIC, obviously through our programs like the CMP program and, working with, our strategic partners and our members to think about how do we help develop career pathways and inspire people to upskill and reskill and adapt is a big role for us all to play. It's jolted us. I was actually checking into a hotel this past weekend, to visit my son, and the gentleman checking me in, we started chatting. He said, I'm a student at the University of Vermont now, studying environmental science. I used to be the director of rooms operations here at this hotel, but everything with the pandemic really, showed me that I, was interested in pursuing this new educational opportunity. So I've taken, a step away from the hotel operation side. And I thought to myself, that one conversation just sort of illuminated for me everything that we're going through as an industry, regardless of what sector we're in, right? And what are we going to do about it? And I think, again, it kind of goes back to, we've got to be talking about the things that matter to inspire the younger people to come into our industry and to continue to pursue a meaningful career in our industry. And we've got to address, some of the fundamental issues about the working environment and, obviously financial compensation. And there's all sorts of things that go into, how we, inspire our workforce. But for sure, it's a challenge. And, but I'm really inspired. We have really strong connections with some of the, the service contractors through our committees and so forth. And, companies like GES and Freeman and, the members at ESCA and obviously, IAEE and CISO are really doing some really incredible thinking around, how do we come together as partners in this to level set on expectations, to economize resources so that we can still facilitate great experiences, but, at least in the short term, deal with the resource issue that we're facing. I think it's one of the most important things we're facing as an industry, and this has got to be at the forefront of our agenda. Absolutely,
I totally agree. In fact, my advice to all the IELA members, who are going to be listening to this interview, is that skilling is going to become an extremely important, upskilling and reskilling, and working on those new ways of working. I think, for me as an organization, this has been the best opportune time to relook at everything that we used to do and reassess every process. And I think we've been able to improve our efficiency by at least 20 to 30%. And that's been very good. But I'm not going to take much more time on this, Amy. Now I'm actually, I'm dwarfed by women leadership around me. We've got you on one side, we have Jacqui, the chair of Industrial Relations Working Group, Elizabeth and Ludivine, all on, at the IELA Secretariat. So I'm just a small guy in this whole group of women leaders. But I must tell you that IELA has very strongly pushed women leadership and women empowerment as a very important pillar of IELA's existence. And we have a Power Up program, which is an ongoing program which started about 2 years ago. And I'm very happy and proud that it's continuing by the IELA leadership right now. So I'm going to bring in Jacqui, who's going to pick your brain on a few of her questions in the context of women leadership on a global level. Over to you, Jacqui.
Thank you, Vicki. Thank you, Amy. That is really so interesting. I just see so many similarities between EIC and IELA from your programs, what you're passionate about. We just have so many similarities. It's actually quite lovely. And I think one of those has, and Vicki started with it, Vicki and Elizabeth started with it in 2019 already, was to drive women in leadership. And I think, as you mentioned, we're now in a stage where we can start upskilling and making our industry attractive. And I think in that mix is to bring women into our industry. In your perspective, what would be the biggest challenge for women to come into our leadership roles?
Well, I think as a sector, we do fairly well in terms of promoting women in leadership compared to some of the others, whether it be financial or technology or manufacturing, but we're not alone as a sector in this area of pursuing a more equitable and a workforce. So one of the things that EIC has done to look at how we kind of come together to leverage the collective wisdom of our membership and our industry is we formed this task force to really look at the issue around equity, not just some of the issues around systemic racism, but gender equity, all issues around equity. And we're really honing in on 4 critical areas. One is career pathways, helping to inspire people to feel that if they come into this industry, whether they're a young, up-and-coming, emerging female leader or, a diversity candidate, that there are real inspiring pathways, that they understand the tremendous impact this industry has and they're inspired to be a part of it. Leadership opportunities, right? Are we finding ways to empower female or diversity candidates into leadership roles? And organizational frameworks, right? How do we build and how do we resource, especially because we're an industry comprised of small, medium enterprise businesses, right? That don't traditionally have these strong human resource departments or support networks. So this group really aims to, through the generous work of our members and our strategic partners, serve up tools and resources that help smaller companies, really look at what are the things that they need to do to improve the organizational framework, the culture, so that those pathways and those leadership opportunities can be built. And the other piece of it is really looking at the events themselves. Are we, as an industry that fosters human connections and creates events, exhibitions, experiences, are we creating welcoming environments as part of that, right? And all of these things sort of go hand in hand, right? But one of the pieces of this puzzle is that as an industry, I don't think we've ever really had the data that says, this is where we are right now as an industry as it relates to equity. So we have a survey in the field that will be open until October 15th to better understand that issue. And I think it starts with really asking some generous and important questions of industry professionals about how are they feeling about all of those things, and what do they think are the necessary changes that need to be implemented in order to facilitate more equitable environments where women can thrive in leadership positions and so forth. So that's the first part of what we're doing. And from there, once we have that data, we'll kind of come together and understand, well, what do we need to then build, develop in terms of resources and education? Personally, though, I think it starts with the individual, right? So we all have a role to play as leaders to lift up voices that might not feel included, to create moments where people feel empowered to take on leadership roles, and that's a individual leadership journey for all of us every day, right? Whether you're male or female, we all have a role to play in making room for equity in our individual leadership as leaders of organizations, as professionals within this industry. But I think it starts with awareness. I think we all have to ask ourselves questions about, well, what are we doing as individuals and how can we improve? And that's a personal journey. It's a journey that we're on together, though, to change hearts and minds and to think really positively about the resources we have currently within our industry that have the ability to move through into leadership positions. So I know that's a long answer to a very important question. It's very complex, but I really do believe we have the power to be a catalyst for change in this area and to set the example globally.
Yeah.
Jacqui, if I can come in, EIC at the Equity Task Force, I've been very fortunate and privileged to be a part of it. And the kinds of discussions that are happening over there are actually, I mean, they open up one's horizon so much. And I think I take one word from what Amy said. There are times when you need to step down to give somebody else the opportunity. And I think that is a very personal journey. And that ability is, again, a quality of leadership when one would step down and give an opportunity to another lady or a woman or within that equity task, equity environment, and give that position to somebody else. And if you can set that example, I think it then automatically follows.
Yeah, I would agree.
Sorry, I've barged in like this, but the stages of Amy, but this was one of the discussions that I was party to during that dialogue with the professional that we were interacting at the Equity Task Force of EIC.
Yeah, I mean, I really believe that we have, if all of us as individuals are committed to this, we truly have this amazingly incredible opportunity to be what we're calling a catalyst for meaningful change. But it does start, if we walk into a boardroom and we see only, men or white men sitting around a table, then we can say to ourselves, we can ask some tough questions of ourselves and one another. Well, what is happening, and how do we, make room for other voices to then, feel empowered to and inspired to continue to drive forward in their career and their ambition. But we do have, I think, some work to do as individuals to commit to that.
Absolutely. I don't know if you attended the Indian Mass Summit last week, where there's an Indian Women's Association, and they decided that while it was COVID and the women were almost, a lot of them weren't working, they thought that they would do the training, and they taught them how to go banking online, there was also women that were farmers, and they just taught them a whole lot of life skills that they wouldn't have necessarily been able to teach. So, and that's just one small women's association in India. And I just thought it was absolutely amazing that as a group of women, they took this on and decided to educate as many women that were farming or that didn't know how to do their banking, and taught them accountancy. And I thought this was just amazing that they used the downtime of COVID to educate and reach out to the women.
Well, unfortunately, I think, again, back to the impact of this pandemic, I mean, it's really, to the greatest degree, impacted those marginalized groups, right? Those folks that need community and leadership and resources now more than ever, and so it's, I think, incumbent upon us, as my friend at the WHO says, we have this opportunity to sort of leverage our collective consciousness, and not make assumptions. I think there's a lot of good people doing great work in this area, but not make assumptions about access and awareness, because that's something we can do together, is grow that, right?
Absolutely. What would your advice be for a woman coming into a leadership role as the first time? I think we all sometimes fell into it. I think the younger women of today's generation are striving to be leaders. They're wanting more. They're seeing that the world is a different place. What would be your advice for them coming in the first time?
So I think of three really important pieces for us all, really, as individuals, regardless of our gender. But I think that for women in leadership roles, mentoring is really important. So to make yourself available to others and to seek out mentors and it does not have to be another female mentor. I've had incredibly generous and lovely mentors that have been, male leaders in this industry that are, so to just think about, and don't have a bias about who that mentor can be, have a diverse cadre of mentors, but you really have to be open and ready for feedback. And so I think that's the other thing, to continue as female leaders to grow your self-awareness about your skills and those areas that you need to improve. I can share, like, personally for me, coming up through hotels and destinations and sales and business development, very, very focused on productivity and outcomes, and in my leadership journey, as I started to think about taking on new roles, having to get sort of more in touch with a different side of who I am, but that I hadn't really shared or leveraged within my professional career, and really leveraging that to, bring people together, to build trust. But it starts with being vulnerable yourself as a leader and sharing more of who you are personally, as opposed to focusing more on, what are we here to accomplish? It's, about creating safe environments. And I think that's, as a female leader, you have to be just aware and cognizant and willing to share those things, that are authentic to you. That, so my experience couldn't necessarily be extrapolated other than to say, that looking for support and being okay to have support, whether that be through mentoring or coaching, is really important. And then just having a community, really, I think as an industry professional, regardless of what sector, particularly leaders, you get so much more out of investing in these professional volunteer roles than you could possibly recognize. And so the idea of participation and giving back and growing your network, I think, is really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just to be bold enough and courageous enough to volunteer to do something that you're passionate about, and really just go for it. And as you say, people will come into your life, being male or female. They will come in, and many people are kind and will help you to get, to encourage you and be your support. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Lovely. Amy, thank you so much. We've taken so much of your time, and we didn't intend to, but it's an absolute delight to listen to you and hear all about it. So really, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
I am really grateful to all of you and the incredible work that you're doing together as a team, and just really inspired by your sense of, generosity and community. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, Amy.
And thank you. Yeah, thank you.
It's an honor working with you on the EIC board. I think IELA is very fortunate and privileged to be on the seat of EIC board. And I think, like Jacqui said, the vision and the mission that IELA has on a global level is in sync with EIC. And especially the programs relating to skilling, upskilling, as well as women leadership. And we're really looking forward to continuing to be a part of EIC and its efforts. And I'm looking forward to working with you. And like I said, I'm dwarfed with so many women leaders around me. So thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you for your time. And I am quite confident that IELA members are going to take home a lot of this and use it for their own businesses and their own improvements. Thank you and take care. God bless.
Thank you so much. God bless. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.